inclusive place for women. Quickly about today's agenda is packed with exciting stuff. First, we will give you a quick introduction to women in streaming media and our allyship program since we got new members joining regularly. Then we will do a brief introduction about our allyship team who is constantly working on joining the force of allies. Next, my team, Lisa and Leto, will introduce today's panel. After that, we'll dive into a lively discussion about amplifying voices, building supportive networks for women in streaming media. We got some questions lined up, but feel free to ask your questions using the chat window. Finally, we will wrap up the session by sharing the details about our upcoming event. Once again, thank you for joining our network, and let's make sure that today's call is a meaningful and inspiring experience for everyone involved. And let's get started. So to start with, I'll start with my introduction. For the last almost 2 decades, I have been deeply involved in the streaming media industry. It's been an exciting roller coaster journey, focusing on launching, expanding, and developing OTT services. I'm passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I lead the allyship program here at Women in Streaming Media, and now I will pass the floor to Lisa and Leto for their introduction.
Good day, everybody. I'm Lisa Craig, and I come to you from Atlanta, Georgia. And my background is in product management and program management. I was responsible for the product team at Warner Brothers Discovery for media supply chain systems for all of the internal applications managing content. Currently, I am working with Amazon Prime Video in their Ready and Sustainability program. Leto?
Hello, I am Lito Baksevanaki. I'm a software engineering manager in Bitmoving. My background is mostly on software engineering, and it is the last 2 years that I work in the industry and responsible for the playback solution of Bitmoving. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa and Leto, for the quick introduction. So we are always getting new members, and let me quickly introduce you to everyone about Women in Streaming Media and our allyship program. As a global networking organization, our mission is to increase diversity and give more visibility to women leaders within the streaming media industry. Through the networking, connections, allyship program, mentorship, we are closing the gap and empowering women in the streaming media industry. Our allyship program aims to drive meaningful change by understanding the privilege, creating awareness, or practicing allyships in the daily life with actions. We like more men in the streaming media industry to lead by example, amplify women's voices, support their representation, and create an inclusive environment. In January 2024, we started our allyship program, which aimed to connect industry allies, spot the potential leaders, have the regular conversations with them, and keep conversation flowing. Our program offers a structure for activities such as AMA session, panel discussion. This is our first panel discussion, by the way. Workshops, knowledge sharing, and exchanging of information between the network. Everything aimed towards the women in streaming media industry. All right, so let's start with it. Wait is over. Lisa, let's start with the panel introduction.
Absolutely. So we are honored to have distinguished leaders and advocates in the streaming arena joining us today. Let me introduce our panelists. First, I'd like to introduce you to Steve Miller-Jones, Vice President of Product Strategy at Netskrt. Steve oversees the Netskrt Edge CDN product, enabling content delivery to capacity challenged locations such as passengers, environments, remote communities, and event venues. With over 15 years of experience in the CDN industry, Steve is a seasoned professional in product management and strategy. Prior to Netskrt, he led product management and strategy at Limelight Networks. His expertise spans video workflows, global CDN operations, and solution engineering for broadcast, media, and entertainment, and enterprise markets. Steve has driven the growth of streaming media and digital content distribution and has designed new service offerings in edge compute and ultra-low latency streaming. Based in Brighton, London, Steve enjoys hosting dinner parties featuring Indian cuisine and plays bass in a middle-aged rock band.
I do.
Next, we have David Hassoun, who is the founder, visionary, and leader of a streaming media consulting and development company for 18 years before being acquired by Dolby. Now at Dolby, he is the chief technologist at Dolby Cloud Media Solutions Organization and helps connect business, product, and technology teams to drive Dolby toward success in the media streaming space. He is no stranger to large-scale, high-pressure streaming events. He's worked with some of the biggest names in the industry to deliver thousands of live streaming events, including the Olympics and 3 Super Bowls. Based in Denver, David loves to do woodworking, metalworking, and some stone carving. He's even built a cabin in the woods with his now wife and stepfather. David will be welcoming twins to his family this fall. So we encourage you today to participate by asking questions in the chat and sharing your thoughts. This is an interactive session, and your engagement is key to enriching the conversation. Without further ado, let's dive into the discussion. Leto, over to you.
Yep. So the first question I have for you is, what is your motivation like for participating in this panel? What inspired you to focus on amplifying women's voices in the streaming media industry? David, we can start with you.
Sure. So, I mean, to me, the more equality and the more diversity that we have, it's a way to really raise the ocean. It makes it better for everybody. And I think our industry's come into some pretty major inflection points from the technology standpoint and so forth in the coming years. And this is a really good opportunity for us to reshape it for the future so that it can be a better place and more exciting and more opportunities and something that can be very appealing to anyone to be able to join. And any way that I can help make that happen and be a ally or whatever I can do to assist those who want it and those who need it, I want to take a more concerted effort in doing so. So I was really excited when the Women in Streaming Media started the allyship program and saw it as a way that I could start to contribute more consciously and also with the guidance from that.
Thank you, David. Steve, what do you think?
For me, I've had the good fortune to work with many very capable and outstanding women throughout my career in streaming media and elsewhere prior to that. And it seems important to provide help that's needed where it's needed. And of course, why shouldn't I help? Why shouldn't we be trying to further and bettering everybody? Additionally, I have 2 daughters, and as they grow up, and one of them is, leaving the home to go to university soon, and we talk a lot about career, and we talk about, what it's like to be in the workplace, and to help guide them in their own career choices. I felt it was important for me to understand what's happening in my own industry from the perspective of others, so that both I can advocate for people in my own industry and also help my children understand what it's like to be in the workplace. And then finally, I suppose I was at the event in Denver earlier in the year where the allyship program was launched, and I thought to myself, why am I not doing something to help promote inclusivity more? And so I'm very pleased that you asked me to join, and I hope I can do something that's useful.
Okay, so I'd like to know a little bit about how you think we might be able to promote collaboration and allyship among women in the streaming media industry. So I'm going to start with you, Steve, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because really, all relationships are based on trust, right? Trust, consistency, some form of accountability. Those are ways to generate solidarity and to enact any kind of social change. So promoting collaboration, allyship in the industry is about building trust across the industry, that it's okay to talk to people, it's okay to talk to each other, and it's okay to find out, how does this work? Why is it like this? What are the ways in which I could, how might I, and to build those kind of trust relationships across the industry so that there are people that you can go and ask those questions of, I think is kind of important. For me, one of the things that I've thought a lot about coming into this is that it's really important to listen. And we can only understand the perspectives and the experiences of other people by listening to them. And so I think this kind of forum, not with men speaking, this kind of forum where women are sharing with each other, this is what it's like for me. These are the things that I'm challenged with, whether it's something specific in the industry, or whether it's something behavioral, or whether it's relationship building or networking. Being able to listen as an ally, and so promoting collaboration through listening, I think, is important. In my role, I seek to create an advocate for policies and practices in my own company that promote equality and inclusion, and that's something that I directly am involved in setting out how we behave as a business. And we're a small startup, we're not very many people. I have the great fortune of being able to, drive some form of advocacy into how we think about who are we including into the groups that we work with. So something as simple as what we might all take for granted in some ways, like something like a sprint review, is everybody got the opportunity to present their work. And if everyone's not comfortable with doing it in that environment, how might we enable them to participate in that, and ensuring that we provide space for people's voices in those type of environments, not just assuming that everyone's happy to do it and why wouldn't you, but maybe some people aren't. And so being able to think about how should I best use these platforms to enable people. So promoting collaboration, we got to trust each other, and that can be difficult. And then, providing opportunity to build that trust, to me, seems the right way to go about it.
That's wonderful. I love that answer. Thank you. David, what are your thoughts on that one?
So, maybe I sometimes have a little bit overly positive view on things, but I think a lot of times it's a matter of making people aware of what they can do. It's not that people aren't willing to, it's just they sometimes just don't even know where to start. So that first step is the hardest step, right? So knowing how to, in what way it makes a difference and it could be valuable, that they can take an action, I think is one of the great ways that could really potentially start that and get that momentum. But I mean, even as Steve said, a lot of that is also you have to listen, you have to ask, you have to understand what matters and makes a difference to the individuals, as well as how that can then be applied at the broader macro level. And I think some of that is creating that safe place, making sure that it's okay that, like, hey, whether it be like as Steve said, like in like a sprint review or whatnot, do you feel comfortable speaking up? Like, we want your voice heard, and if not, what can we do to enable you to get that confidence or get that training or whatever it is that you need to make that a successful route, right? So creating opportunities to provide additional support or growth, or ways that those voices can be, or that the successes and so forth can be amplified elsewhere and still reflected back to where they matter and to the source of that, I think is really, really important. And I think, like I said, just making it known what you can do, and I think people will take those steps if they see that. And some of it's like, well, if it's easy, people will do it. And if it's not easy, then there's less people who will. But if you start small with those easy ones and you build up that minimum, then I think you start to have a really powerful rolling tide that can create some good change.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely making people aware of what they can do is also related to our next question. What advice would you give to women who are navigating new challenges or seeking to advance their careers in the streaming media industry? David?
Oh, sure. So this is always a fun one. First and foremost, I think that one of the most important things is you have to value yourself. And if you have any doubt in that, talk to your friends, your support network, to people in a group like this and so forth, because you truly are valuable, and you have to be able to realize that, because sometimes it's going to be up to you at the base level to be able to fight for it. And if you don't, you're not going to get as far in some cases, and that isn't always right. And that's something that we should change. But some of this is, once again, it's perception, right? And that goes towards build that network, get that support. You don't traversing and growing your career ultimately isn't rely on any individual shoulders, but there's so much opportunity to get support and to get collaboration, and what you can do and how you can go forward and what next step is and how to negotiate difficult situations and so forth. That will inevitably create way more, I think, opportunity and reward. And I think that's a really key thing. I mean, to me, the most important thing in my career and growth has been building that network. And that creates those opportunities, that creates those potentials for mentorship and so forth, which is another one key thing that I would say is find those who you want to be and talk with them. And find out their path was, and it might not be for you, it might not be your exact path, but there's so much you can learn from that. And I've also found, like, once again, people are oftentimes so willing to help, but they don't know how to take that action. Asking them, like, hey, listen, would you be willing to help mentor me as I continue my career? And be able to ask you questions or help guide me into how to navigate some of these decisions, and when I should push for this, or how should I ask to get a raise or this next promotion and so forth. No, don't have to go at it alone. And I think that's so powerful and something that can easily be overlooked. And the last but not least is everybody has to fake it till they make it. Don't stress out too much about that. That is one of the most debilitating things, I think, at time. It's like, oh, I just don't think I could do that, or I'm taking this, I feel like I have imposter syndrome. It's everybody. And that means you're in a situation that you're gonna have a really cool opportunity to grow. So look for those, step into it, lean into it, because that is going to be where it really makes a bigger difference. Sorry, I was a bit scatterbrained. I'm all over the place.
No.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think the same?
There's some really things that resonate with me in what David said. Absolutely, the imposter syndrome piece. We work in an industry of complexity. I'm sure many industries are complex. So I'm not saying that's unique to streaming, but streaming media is a complicated set of the vendor space is enormously complicated. The sort of constellation of people that do different things. The actual process of having content that you want to get to people, and owning subscribers and managing players and environments for people to subscribe to and access your content. There's huge amounts of complexity wherever you sit in the industry. So yes, one of the things that resonated for me with what David was saying was the sort of mentoring piece. But I think about it more, and for me, I've used this thing for myself over time. Picked a couple of people I know who I'm good friends with, who I find, and I've had the good fortune to get to know. And they said, hey, look, can I just have a couple of phone calls with you over the year and just talk to you about what I'm trying to do, get your opinion? Just someone who is willing to listen. I mean, and that is as much of an advocate almost as you need, because if you do it with regularity, you kind of build into this process of rationalizing into words the things you're thinking in your head about where you want to get to, what you want to do, problems you're having, challenges you're facing with, decisions about what you're doing. So definitely someone who you just talk to a couple of times a year and say, hey, let's sync up, maybe do it for each other, or if you're not comfortable doing that, just ask a couple of friends who or people who you respect. And that's definitely part of normalizing the stresses that you have. That's definitely part of something that worked for me. And then I think, coming back to what I was just saying about complexity, I think a real important piece in any industry is understanding that wherever you sit, kind of knowing a range of things that are going on about you. Don't just know your part. essentially. Like, understand how it fits into the industry and how that gives your work and your position context. So that's an important piece. And then when you sort of start talking to people, it turns out people love to talk about what they do. There's nothing more than people like to do than sort of tell you, oh, here's the thing that I do. I like doing this. And, it's kind of, some of the streaming is a bit of a geeky industry where people love to talk about what they do. So something from my own experience, which maybe is useful here, I was seeking to increase my sort of range of responsibility that I had in a business I was in. I thought, well, what about the people? If I was to get more responsibility, I'd be working with some different people, right? So I kind of need to influence them so that they understand, that I understand them and they understand what I'm trying to do. So I just went and told them, hey, I'm doing this thing at the moment and I don't talk to you very often. Could we just meet regularly and maybe once a month, and just tell me what's important to you? And they started then telling me, okay, look, I'm trying to solve these problems in my part of the business. I'm trying to solve these problems over here. And with 3 or 4 people, you sort of suddenly built a better understanding of the complexity that everyone's working together to solve. So you kind of get out of your silo a little bit. And so definitely that process of finding some people to talk to in your company about extending your understanding of your part of the complexity, that's a really important thing, I think, and it's worked well for me. Checking in with someone regularly who you like and you can talk pretty openly with. Maybe someone who doesn't work for a competitor is helpful, but check in with someone a couple of times a year and just talk about what you're trying to do and use them as a sounding board for reality. And David said, meet people in the industry. Easier said than done sometimes. If you're flying alone at a conference, it can be daunting to break into groups of people. And yes, the imposter syndrome creeps back in. Why am I here? Why would they want to talk to me? Most of them are kind of nice, but it can be challenging. But do what you can to meet some people who you can sort of share your stories with, and that all helps, I think, and from my own experience. If you're seeking to advance your career, there are probably some bits in there. If you're having challenges, find some friends, a group like this to share your experiences with and use as a sounding board. And I'm sure people with similar experiences will suddenly come out of the woodwork.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's a lot to take in from the two of you. And I love the imposter syndrome is real. I think women experience that much more than men generally. And I love the advice that Steve gave about going and just making those connections and staying connected with people, because networking and doing that is just so important in the complexities in the industry. I'm dealing with that right now, trying to understand stuff, new things that I'm working on. But with that, I would love to talk about maybe if you guys can share some examples or successful initiatives that you've seen that have effectively supported women in streaming. Steve?
Yeah, this was the most difficult to pull out. I'll be honest, as much as I can. The biggest thing for me, I suppose, is thinking about it and saying, well, didn't everything support everybody? And obviously the answer is no. The thing that I've seen in streaming media that's changed in the last, say, 5 years, it was starting just before COVID, and I think it's extended a lot more now. It used to be, and I won't pick any conference in particular to point at, but in the conference side of it, it used to be very much a talking shop, and there's a metaphor I like to use. If you put a bunch of brain surgeons together in a room, they'll talk about brain surgery, and ultimately they will probably start performing brain surgery. If you put a bunch of engineers for streaming media in a room together, they'll talk about streaming media until they come up with something that they think they should solve. And I think that the conference environment used to be pretty male dominated, and certainly people that would talk be pretty male dominated. And I've had the pleasure of speaking on a number of panels in my time in the industry at conferences, and I'd say until about 5 years ago they were very, very male heavy. And I think that's beginning to change, and that there is more diversity coming into the business focused and technical focused conference arena. So there's a wider range of women in more of the public eye of the industry. So I think that's been good. Specific industries inside the business that are focused on women. I think there have been a couple of sort of groups I've seen who sort of done things like we do like the lunch and learn together, and that's been a good internal method that's worked. Lunch and learn is always good anyway for sharing details, but again, it can be very, I'm going to stand up and talk about technology for half an hour, and that's not necessarily interesting for everybody. So I think that might be a good idea, and I've seen that work somewhat well.
Okay, thank you. What do you think, David?
I agree. This is a tough one. I mean, honestly, can I say the women in streaming media? But the reality there, though, is I think, as you touched on to Steve, I mean, I think one of the reasons why we're starting to see more active consciousness and things like conferences of, hey, we need to have appropriate representation on these panels from women and so forth, is, I think, largely directly related to what you guys have been doing. And you guys have been out there and doing that. And a presence there, which therefore makes people more conscious. And I think that's really important and really valuable. And I do think we're seeing that tiny little bits of that. And hopefully that start to gain that momentum beginning. Aside from that, there's been other organizations, things like Women Who Code, and so forth, that have been involved with in the past that also might not have been directly related to streaming media, but was still also valuable within there. And aside from that, as far as initiatives or strategies that have been successful, it's hard to point those out. It really is. I haven't seen a lot of them at some of the companies I've worked with and so forth as much. And as a small company before we were acquired, we took real active thought and process in that, and made sure that at least half of our leadership was women and so forth. And it made sense. Like it worked well, but we didn't have really good defined strategy around that. It was just more to kind of a little bit of our ethos, and that isn't how that applies and scales outward. So I see that's something that needs to truly grow more.
Thanks for your honesty and authenticness in that question.
So there are some interesting questions in the chat. So to make sure that we have time for them, I will try some of them now. So Megan is asking, do you have any specific examples in your career where you saw a challenge faced by a woman colleague, and how did you address it? Steve, do you have an example?
Yeah, I'm sure we all have an example, at least one somewhere. For me, there was a project I was involved in, which was a little UI UX focused, and I'll put it this way: a range of the stakeholders in the project were relatively dismissive of the lady doing a lot of the UI UX work, because they felt that there was no way she understood what the customer needed. And so she was the best person for the job, right? She was absolutely excellent at the UI UX piece. She was excellent at doing meetings with people to understand what was happening. She was going through a process that she had learned and was an expert at in terms of how to understand the consumer and what it is they need from a user experience that is going to drive the outcome that we needed from the product. And there was no doubt in my mind that she was going to be able to get the result that we needed. And what the problem we were facing internally was that there were people who just weren't willing to accept that she would be able to understand or articulate or comprehend what the customer needed, because they were a man. So what did I do in that case? This person was on my team, and so she was running point on the project to bring the UX design to and the end-to-end piece together into a definition of what we were going to do, and a project plan and designs. And so we used to run weekly, at some point in the project, like weekly status update. This is where we've got to, this is where we're going. So I would introduce it. That's where I got to. I would introduce it. So this is where we've got to, this is what we're doing. And I felt, and I talked with her about this, that at that time, a way to overcome some of the challenges we were facing was for me to say, this is where we are, and I believe in what we're doing, and this is what we've done. And now here's so-and-so, no names, here's so-and-so who's going to talk to you about the details of the progress that we've actually made. So I was providing sort of the air cover, if you like, of saying, we've made some progress, we've worked with these people, now here's the detail. And the detail was coming from the person that had done the work. And I was trying to put up a bit of a block and tackle barrier against the people who were like, well, this woman can't possibly understand what we need. So I was trying to enable the person still to have the platform to present their work. And I was trying to bat away some of the negativity that was coming towards us. Did it work? Oh, we got the product out and it looked great and it worked well. You know, I don't know if that was helpful or not. It was something that we decided together was the right way to go. And it kind of reduced a bit of the stress and friction. I'm sure there were other ways to deal with that situation, but that was one thing that I did.
Thank you. And David, do you have any examples from your career?
Sure. I mean, there's the easy one right out of the gate that I think happens a lot still, and I've done this myself, but a lot of times our part of our roles are we get together in meetings, we have these great talks, and we get through and stuff. I can get really excited. I can talk over people. And I've also learned and really tried to be more conscious of that, and not only for myself, but for others, of making sure that everyone's voice is appropriately heard. It's easy to oftentimes step on someone's toes or just plow over something that someone's trying to say, and saying that, hold on, no, this person has something to say, and making sure that they have that time and space to be able to express their opinion is really important. And that's something that I still see, and I like to be more of an ally in now, and be conscious of making sure that everyone, and especially women, have that opportunity to say what they need to say, because it has value within these organizations, within these collaborations. And I think oftentimes it's can be left to, well, whoever speaks loudest or first wins, and that's not okay. So that's something that I continually work towards addressing within our teams and our organization and so forth. Other specific examples, we've had it. I've run into issues before with companies that I've been working with when they're evaluating vendors or so forth. There's been specific instances where was a woman-owned company, and there was comments around like, man, this person's she's just really rough and kind of in your face, and it just it's just kind of off-putting. And I heard about this secondhand. As one of the people on my team actually that did this, and I was so proud of them. And he actually stopped them and said, hey, listen, you know how hard it is to actually be heard, and to get your voice across in this industry, especially for a woman. I think you're kind of given a little bit of the role mentality a bit on this, and you need to be more conscious of what's going on here. Would you be saying the same things if it was a guy in this role? And I think that's a perfect example of getting people to stop and actually think about what they're doing and saying, because once they do that, they get a great result and feedback from that. But without them being made aware and putting that mirror in front of them, bad things continue to happen.
Okay, Steve, can you tell us about maybe how we can get men more involved and how to get them to help amplify women in the industry?
I mean, I think things like this are great. It's essentially trying to highlight that there is a problem that needs their help. How do we ensure that men are aware that they need to take the time to think about how to best be an ally, or how to best help advocate? How should I advocate for the women in my team? Where do I need to do that? When might I need to do that? You know, if you're a leader or a manager of people, or you know, you run a team in any form, you need to be obviously looking out for your people. And is everyone happy? Is everyone performing? You know, but then, you know, what else do I need to do in order to think that I'm doing the best to support the diversity that's in my team, and what challenges might they be facing? So some of the most difficult things probably for men are to understand, what should I be looking out for? Right? Because, you know, most men hate to be to think that, or be told that there's something they don't know about how they should behave, right? And so one of the things I think that's perhaps most useful for anyone who's in a position to be able to be an advocate, promote, or ensure inclusivity in their working environment is to say, hey, here are some things you can do. You know, like in this environment here, you know, we're talking about women in streaming, and you know, you could sort of look at any industry and go, well, you know, we live in the time we live in, and you know, 50 years ago, you know, the reality is that patriarchy has meant that this is the environment that we live in. These systems were built up, designed by men for men, and we're still living with the decaying chaos of that, right? And we're trying to make a difference in general in society. We're lucky enough to live in countries that promote inclusivity and diversity. Then we're sort of beginning to see that in what our children learn at school, you know, the subjects that are available to them, how they deal with the diversity in their friendship groups. So I think it's about being able to say to men, here are some things that you could think about doing. How should you, or how might you incorporate advocacy for women into your hiring structure for your team? Is it, you know, rather than saying, well, we have an inclusivity policy, great, what does that actually mean? How do you actually make that work? It's great to have a policy. Everyone has to have a policy, right? Does it mean it's enacted? Does it mean it's effective? So what are the actual things to do? And those are the questions that are harder to answer, I think.
Right.
Sorry, I've
Yeah.
rambled a bit there. I apologize. But I think it's complex. But simple question, what should we do? Perhaps is you know, answering a question with a question is terrible, but
I think that's a great idea, because I think, yeah, it kind of goes back to what one of you said earlier is, you know, people are often willing to help, but we have to ask, you know, for the
Yeah.
help. And
I mean, you know, the best thing to be an ally is to listen, right? So other things men can, yeah, in people who are in position of power, to include anybody, say, I need to provide a space for you to be able to participate. What does that look like for these individual people? Zoom might not be for everybody. I said sprint review earlier, that might not be for everybody. And we need to listen to people so that we can create the space for them to be successful. And I think that's got to be key to it. So telling men to listen is a great thing to do.
I can't get my husband to listen, but
Keep trying.
yeah, I keep trying. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this topic, David?
I think there's two key parts, and I think Steve touched on it a little bit, but I mean, the first one is awareness, right? Some of that is, how do you get someone aware of their biases or their unconscious biases, right? And also aware that there's something that they can do about it. So, I mean, the first thing is, you know, and the awareness is, you know, how is something meant versus how it's perceived. Well, like, well, I didn't mean it that way. Well, yeah, that's fine for you, and I'm glad that you didn't mean it that way. But if you said something, you also have to consider how it's going to be perceived and by the audience within there. And bringing that type of awareness can really start to invoke some critical thought and potential change, and that comes to the action, right? So first, of course, how do we make men aware of what they can be doing and also not be doing, and then and what other people are doing and what they can be aware of, and how they can spot that. Okay, you know, there's something's going on here. I need to speak up. I need to be an ally. And then the action, right? And I still think, like I said, maybe I'm too positive. I still think a lot of people are want to do something, but they don't know what to do, or don't know how to do it. And hopefully, maybe if we can educate people better in regards of what to be aware of and what you can do in that situation, that we can see that action take place. Because that, I think, is really key, whether it be like, hey, I'm going to speak up for this person, or hey, I'm going to make sure they have an opportunity to present, or hey, we have a panel coming together. Let's make sure that we get some other voices on here. And look to create that better opportunity, or we're hiring. Like, listen, this is a really good chance for us to get some people in some very valuable roles that's going to be value to us and value to the broader industry, and to an underrepresented population. So I think part of that, though, is still how do you make those actions easy? Because people are inherently lazy, or at least challenging when it comes to doing more or doing something different, especially if it's uncomfortable for them. And I don't know the right answers to how that we can make that easy and better quickly, but even if it's a slow burn, that's fine. And maybe there's, hey, like the top 3 things that are very simple that you can look for and what you could do about them, and making sure that that gets out in front of people.
That's amazing. I love that. Thank you.
Okay, I will continue with another question from the chat. What have you learned or witnessed from working with women in our industry, specifically that has potentially changed your perspective? If you have a case like this, I don't know, Steve or David.
I worked for a while alongside someone. I shared a head of role with a lady for a couple of years, and the reason that our boss had decided it shouldn't be one of us running this thing, but there was 2 of us, is we needed different perspectives on, let's call it internal, external, right? There are different skill sets needed to in a product team to describe how are we looking after the product, and how do we go out to the marketplace, and how do we manage the operation of a product. And that was an absolutely awesome couple of years. Just the fact that we both thought about things in different ways and would solve problems in different ways gave us an advantage over doing it by oneself. So it's never been lost on me that women potentially think in different ways, certainly from how I do. And so that's always useful to take other people's ways of solving a problem, or ways of thinking about how to do something, or ways of communicating, and being able to help each other and say, do you know what, in this situation, it's going to be better if I do this and you do that in this situation. And so that was really, really powerful for me, certainly. I hope so for them as well. I've always also thought seeing women deal with difficult situations is enormously powerful, perhaps because you've had to learn to do it more than men. Some people are, regardless of their gender orientation, are enormously difficult to deal with, and women tend to deal with difficult people in slightly different ways from men. And certainly I've witnessed women able to defuse situations very quickly, versus how things might stay at a slightly more heated level between 2 men. And men and women, difficult woman towards a man, difficult woman towards a woman is different. So certainly those are things that have changed my perspective on how to deal with difficult people. And by difficult people, I don't mean people who are just annoying, but sometimes it's difficult to find a path of agreement with somebody, and someone can be more stuck to their position than you'd like them to be, or you might be more stuck to your position than they want you to be, and so difficulty comes in different forms. But yeah, so sharing a sort of head of role with someone was really an educational thing for me, and it went really well. I really liked that relationship, and we keep in touch. And yeah, witnessing how women deal with difficult people has always been interesting for me, and I think I've learned something from that.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing. David, do you have an example from your side?
I don't know if I'm gonna answer it right. I can say, for me, early on in my career, so this is some like 17 years ago or so, I had a challenging experience where I had brought on someone I'd been working with for a while now. It was a wonderful woman that I worked with for a number of years. And prior to working with her and going through some challenging stuff, I had this ill-conceived notion in my mind that, work is business, there's no place for emotion. And I was young, I was dumb, I learned a lot. But we had some challenges and we worked through those, and she brought a lot of emotion. And I wasn't ready for that. And I didn't know how to deal with that properly in the workplace. And I thought that I didn't have that place there. And in talking deeper with her and going through this, and we worked through it and worked together for a number of years afterwards, and it was great. I had to really change my perspective and learn to be more open to how different people deal with different situations. And that emotion also bespoke the fact of caring and that they give a damn, and that this is also affecting people in their lives, and that's easy to overlook. And having that type of kind of in my face change and situation was really powerful and challenging at the time, because it went against what I thought and was expecting. And I didn't do it right at the time, but I've learned since then. I've grown.
So speaking of growing, what advice would you have for women entering the streaming industry or trying to get promoted within the streaming industry? I'll start with you, David.
Two very different things, in my opinion. Some things overlap though. So in entering, talk with people, create connections, get involved with organizations. To me, so much of your career is, to use a really dated saying, is who you know, right? It's not in the maybe the old way that you can think of it, but those connections you make, those friendships, those people that you both support and get support from entering an industry and a career is incredibly valuable. I think that's really something that is very good, and make sure it's talking to people. This is where you want to go. It's an amazing industry to be in. And if this is what is interest to you, find your path within there, and don't worry about, is this the exact role that I want right now? There's going to be so many opportunities to kind of flow through different areas. And I think that's going to be a really cool opportunity to capitalize on. As you start into this, once again, go back to believe in your worth, and be willing to negotiate. I think one of the best things starting off in your career is read some good books. I like Never Split the Difference or others on negotiating, because those will help you for the rest of your career. And don't feel bad to do so. You have to speak up for yourself. And the second part was, if you want to get a promotion and so forth, right? If you want to grow within the career, I think that so once again, believe in your value and your worth, and come up with the proper way to express that and show that. And stand up for yourself within that. Continue to use your network as well, and find ways to continue to grow that. But I think that a lot of it is you have to be willing to ask for what you want, or you're never going to get it. Right? You only fail when you stop trying. And to not try because they'll give me a promotion when they think I'm ready. Oh, that's a load of shit. You have to oftentimes, it doesn't mean you'll get it on day one, but listen, I'm here to really make sure my career grows, and I want to figure out what I need to do to get that next step. Make it very clear, what do you guys expect and need from me to be able to achieve that, and let's make a plan to make that happen, and let's make it measurable so that I can refer back to this. And within there, and that's where I think having mentors and allies and so forth that you can work with to also help make sure you have that support as well as that nudge if you need it is really good. And hopefully you also get that through your leadership within your organization.
That's excellent advice. Thank you. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think David nailed it. Certainly, Nothing, I fully agree with everything he said. I was thinking about something that my wife did some years ago. She wanted to change careers, and so she volunteered with someone for a while to gain a bit of experience about the industry she wanted to move into. And then when she was trying to land the actual paid job subsequently to that with a different firm, she spent some time trying to get to know the people that were going to be advertising the role and sort of understanding what they wanted from someone who would be in the role. What did the role entail? What might she need to know in order to be successful at it? How might she need to what might be involved in the day-to-day? She put a lot of effort into building a relationship with someone so that when the job was there, they already knew her. And I think that certainly helps. You know, that's one example. It wasn't a technical industry, not that everything in streaming is technical, but it was sort of a marketing industry. But it sort of makes me think about, if you know, looking to advance your career, definitely having a plan, like David said. You know, thinking for yourself, what do I want to achieve? You know, classic interview question: where do you see yourself in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years? What do you want to achieve? And I don't mean like having, you know, on my whiteboard up on my board, tick things. Yes, I achieved these things this year, but you know, like having a sort of trajectory. I want to achieve these things. How might I go about becoming a senior director, or how might I go about becoming VP, or whatever the thing is you want to go and do? You know, if you want to become the greatest DBA the world's ever seen, how might I go about becoming the greatest DBA the world's ever seen? And sort of research that and sort of try and work out, how would I do these things? And then definitely go and talk to the people who you think might be the hiring people and say, hey, I can see that this is a role that comes up from time to time. You know, what's needed? And so definitely building the relationships and being willing to ask the questions. You know, that's the advice I'd give to anyone, woman or not. Saying, I want to advance my career. How should I go about doing that? You've got to understand what you want, and you've got to understand what you're going to need to get there. And that comes from, again, you know, building trust and finding some allies who will help you with that information. Coming into streaming media, I think, sort of harking a bit back to something I said earlier on, you know, the industry is complex. You know, if you want to be, I don't know, have a role in some part of it, and you have a certain set of skills, understand how they fit in, understand what's around your area. How do you fit into the complexity that is this industry? And you know, what else might you need to know in order to be able to find the way in? And I guess, you know, advice that anyone would take trying to break into a new industry, and David kind of said this, you know, the dream role might not be the first one you take, right? You might have to, or you might find a role that is kind of adjacent to where you want to get to, and that might be a good way in. You know, find a friend, you know, someone who works something similar, someone who knows someone who works in something similar. You know, use the network. Absolutely use the networks. Most of the people, if not all the people I've ever met in the streaming industry, are pretty friendly. There's a lot of musicians and DJs hiding in the streaming media industry, tell you that much. And so, you know, there's always fun people around who are pretty easy to get to know. But yeah, use your network. Sorry, that's a bit of a dumb answer to that last one, but it's obvious, but worth saying.
Thank you.
So I guess that would be the end. We are out of time. I don't know, Dipali, would you like to pick up, or?
Yeah. So, wow, such an amazing, incredible advice. As we come to the end of this insightful panel discussion on amplifying voices, building supportive network for women in streaming media, I want to extend my gratitude for our esteemed panelists for sharing their invaluable perspective and experiences. Thank you so much, David and Stan. It's evident that building a supporting network for women in streaming media is not just the goal, but a necessity to boost the diversity by amplifying the voices, challenging stereotypes, and championing diversity. We covered the way for more equitable future. As we conclude, Let us carry forward the momentum gained from this discussion. Together, we can dismantle the barriers, amplify the voices, and build a more supportive and inclusive streaming media industry for women. Thank you to our panelists, members who have joined for this call today, and allyship team for their participation and dedication to this crucial conversation. Let's make sure that this conversation continues so that we create an environment within the streaming media industry where women feel valued and included and amplified their voices. For more discussions and collaborations and conversation with David and Steve, you can connect them on LinkedIn, or you can also write us on email at allyship@womeninstreamingmedia.org. Remember, our monthly remote member meetup is happening on upcoming next Thursday, May 30th. Check our LinkedIn page and website tomorrow to find out who is our guest speaker this month. Don't miss the opportunity to learn. She is incredible, dynamic lady, and you will know her name tomorrow on our LinkedIn page. Stay connected for by following us on LinkedIn page or signing up on our website. Your feedback is valuable, so please take 2 minutes and share your feedback in terms of what we can improve, what we are doing right. Let us know your anything you want to improve us. You'll find a link in chat window. Once again, thank you, David and Steve, for being such awesome allies. Special thanks to JP. He has left. He has some commitment, but it was really good to see him on this call. Thanks, everyone. See you next month to our next Ally of the Month meet. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good day ahead.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everyone.